Good morning. We're back. We're live. This is not a taped and recorded show. We're not lazing out. We're live. We're at work. Matt Doer's here. Brett Barney's here. Shelley Winter's here. Randy Wiles is here. And I'm live. 404-741-1067. So I wanted to, as you know, I went to New York with my mom. We went up to New York. It was her birthday weekend. It was her birthday weekend, and we went back to New York. She wanted to celebrate there. And we also had to take care of business. As you know, I'm kind of the caretaker for my mom, and so there's a lot of business to take care of and stuff like that, and a lot of stuff you can't do unless you're in the city. And so on the way up, I don't know if you know this, but I only fly Delta, and the reason why I only fly Delta is because Delta has the little TVs in the back of the seats. And so whatever the price of a Delta ticket, it's still a good price, and you get to watch great movies. And so one of the movies that I watched on the way back home last night was The Green Book. And I'm really, really sorry that it took me so long to see this movie, because it actually is a very, very good movie. It's based on a true story, the story of Don Shirley, who was a concert classical pianist, African-American, who lived above Carnegie Hall, and his driver, who's an Italian guy, Tony Villalonga, who was a kind of a not mob, but, ties to the mob, I guess, but he was a bouncer type, a strongman type, and he was hired to drive Mr. Shirley throughout the South for a tour, the Deep South. And so the movie goes on to tell us different stories. You can imagine the white guy driving a black guy, the stories of not being able to use the bathroom, having to stay in different hotels. And the book is the movie is centered around a book called The Green Book, which is an actual book that existed, that was sold all across the country to African-American families for when they traveled in the South, places where they can eat safely and sleep safely in segregated hotels. This was the culture of the South. I want to remind you at this point, for those of you who we talk about the Confederacy a lot here on the Shelley Winter Show, I want to remind many of you, this was not a legal premise. This was not the law. This was the culture. This was, quote unquote, in one of the movie characters, this is how it's done down here. It's the way it was. It wasn't the law. The federal government, the local governments didn't say you had to have this. It was the culture. But, so I watched this movie, great movie, and in the movie there were heroes. One of the heroes was a police officer, a young police officer in what's called a sundown town. And those of you who may not know, a sundown town, they had signs that said this is a sundown town, where people could not be caught, African Americans could not be caught outside after sundown. This was a real thing. This was not made up. This was not 100,000 years ago. This was maybe 30, 40 years ago. Sundown towns. It was written about it famously in the New York Times in like 1973. So it wasn't that long ago. Many people who are listening to this station probably remember these sundown towns. So he's caught in a sundown town, and they said, hey, it's after sundown. You can't be here. He was a passenger in the car. Calls the white cop. He says to the Tony Villalonga, he says, hey, what are you doing driving him? And he says, he's my boss. And the police officer goes on to call him half N-word, and the Tony guy slugs him. And so they both get arrested, and so they're going to be harm done to them. But in this scene, there's a young police officer, who says several times, hey, we are violating this guy's rights because the black guy didn't do anything. There's no reason for us to have arrested him. He's the good guy. Now, whether he existed or not, we don't know. Whether this whole story went on, we don't know. But according to the movie, it did. And this guy existed. So I want to skip ahead from that point to the point of City of Hoschton, 2019, not about a couple days ago, a story broke where the mayor of City of Hoschton, right about 15 miles above Gwinnett County, not way away from here, right around the corner from where we live right now, the mayor says there's 4 candidates for city manager. And she says that Well, this one candidate, he's the most qualified candidate, and he's the best candidate, but he's black. And the city of Hoschton would not be ready for that, so they tossed his application. And so here's the point I'm trying to make in my opening rant today. It's not to highlight the bad sundown towns that existed. It's not to highlight the culture of the South where a concert pianist who was recognized all over the world couldn't even use the bathroom in a club that he was playing in and had to stay in a separate hotel and couldn't eat in the restaurants that he was playing in and couldn't share the same services that the people he was playing for could use. Not here to highlight that. I'm here to highlight something entirely different. I'm here to highlight that in both cases there were good people who were on the side of history and on the side of the right thing and on the side of justice, saying throughout these periods, or throughout, in the case of the movie, in a very hostile situation to his co-workers, saying, hey, this is not right. And in the same case with the city of Hoschton, the mayor made this statement, and they tossed the guy's application solely because he was African American. In the Hoschton city charter, it says that discrimination would not be allowed. Everything was based on merit. And by the mayor's own admission, this guy was the best qualified candidate, but he was black, and the city wouldn't be ready for this. But she told two city council members, one Hope Weeks and the other Susan Powers, both Caucasian women, and they went to the city attorney and said, yo, this is not a good thing. We can't do this. And so the point of this rant is to say, listen, as there are people in this country who want us to stay divided, there are people in this country who want the division to stand. There are people who profit off the division. There are people in this country who want to believe that the division is as bad as it was during Don Shirley and Tully Villalonga's drive throughout the Deep South in the late 50s and early 60s. They want us to believe that. All of these people exist in this country. Well, I'm here to tell you that what I want to see exist is that the police officer in the sundown town who wanted to, who was essentially saying that Mr. Shirley's rights were being violated, that the lady Hope Weeks, a city council member in 2019, and Susan Powers, that these represent the vast majority of people in this country. That the vast majority of people are the Hope Weeks and the Susan Powers. They don't go for, well, he's the most qualified, but he's black. Yes, they are going to be the mayor, Teresa Kennelly, who is the mayor of Hoschton, who believe this, but there are double the amount of people who don't believe it. So if you just take the random poll of three women, Teresa Kennelly, Susan Powers, and Hope Weeks, two of the women out of the three say, well, no, that's not right. Let's take this up the ladder to the city attorney. And there's going to be that random person, but the media and everyone else in Facebook and social media, African Americans, whites, people all along the totem pole want us, for political reasons, want us to believe that Teresa Kennelly, the mayor of Hoschton, is the norm. And I'm here to tell you, I'm here to prove to you that Hope Weeks and Susan Powers are the norm. That the vast majority of people in this country don't think other people are unequal or bad or less than due to their race, gender, skin color, or anything else. That might have been a time in our history where people believed that, where it was the culture to believe that. But that time is long gone. And there may be still remnants of that time hanging out there. There may still be people running around that believe that. But those are the people that are in the minority. And I would say, based on this Hoschton story, those people in the minority are almost 2 to 1. It's the Shelley Winter Show on the New Talk 106.7. It's time to go to the Haviland Express Loop Traffic Center with Matthew Dorr.